Hello everybody, welcome to Awesome Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and drop a like on this video. I'm trying to hit 100k subscribers on the channel by the end of the playoffs. Your subscription would be much appreciated. Also drop a like, it only takes 1 second and makes a massive difference. Welcome to playoff previews that were not good enough for the main channel / I didn't have time for. In this video, I'm going to talk about the Bulls-Bucks matchup and the Heat-Hawks matchup, and I'm probably not going to cover all of my bases because I'm going off of the top of my head, and naturally that is going to mean I leave some shit behind. The Heat and the Hawks are about to play in T-minus like 15 minutes at the time of recording this. I'm hopefully going to upload this video at halftime, so I guess I'll just address that series first and foremost. Do the Hawks have a chance to upset the Miami Heat? I don't think it is out of the realm of possibility. I've seen some people talk about this, but really I don't think enough people, because I don't think people will realize that the Hawks have been a lot better as of recently than they were to open the year. The Hawks finished above 500. They are a much better 8 seed than most 8 seeds typically end up being. As a result of this, I believe that they have a genuine shot to beat the Miami Heat, because because I personally don't believe that the Miami Heat are all that legitimate, unfortunately. Just the fact that they don't have a clear superstar option always inherently makes me question. And I believe that Trae Young is the best player in this series, because my opinion of Jimmy Butler, like pretty much everybody else's, has gone down in the past couple of seasons. And in my opinion of Trae Young is like very, very high. I think Trae is bordering on a top 10 player. Jimmy Butler, not so much. So I would say that the Hawks have the best player in the series. But in terms of being well-rounded, of course, that goes to the Miami Heat. And it's interesting because this is a very offensive-minded team in the Atlanta Hawks versus a very defensive-minded team in the Miami Heat. The Hawks can be not terrible on offense, and the Heat can be... the Hawks can be not terrible on defense, and the Heat can be not terrible on offense, but they also have a tendency to be terrible at those things. So it will be a matter of offense versus defense, and honestly, in the modern NBA, offense is going to win that most of the time, typically speaking, but the depth of that offensive help is not so much there. They've been having to play like Danilo Gallinari a crazy amount of minutes, which at this point in his career he's really not good enough to be doing, let alone being basically the second offensive option. If it's not him, it's Bogdanovic, and that's not a great second offensive option either. Granted, neither is John Collins, and this team got to conference finals with those three being the backup offensive players to Trae Young. But either way, I don't particularly believe in the offensive talent outside of Trae to the point where I won't just straight up say this is offense versus defense. But what Trae Young is capable of bringing to the table as an offensive player is not something that I would want to face in a playoff series, regardless of how good my team is. And I personally believe the Heat have room for slippage where other contenders don't necessarily have it. That said, the depth of the Heat, the coaching of the Heat, which is a huge factor, the defense, I'm going to go with the Heat in this series. However, I do believe the Hawks are going to take 2 games off of this team, and I would go with Miami in 6 games. I do think they have the defensive personnel to bother Trae Young, but ultimately I think he's going to be fine. But he's probably not going to go off either, and that's really what would probably be required in order for him and the Hawks to actually win this series. So, Heat in 6. Chicago Bulls versus Milwaukee Bucks. I am going to game 3 and 4 of this series, and honestly, I really wish it was a different matchup, because I'd like to see my team win a playoff game, because I feel like there is a very genuine shot that the Bulls do not win a single game in this series. The Bucks are a horrible matchup for the Bulls. Not that there are that many great matchups for them, but the Bulls, as we all know, have been just a completely different team the second half of the season. Basically, at the turn of the calendar year, they went from a team that was on pace for almost 60 wins to a team that did not even get to 50. and they have, I believe, the 5th worst record post All-Star break in the NBA, and the other 4 teams that are worse than them are all lottery teams. And they also, of course, have a horrible record against good teams. So my question is, and a lot of people have actually asked this, much to my surprise, do the Bulls have any shot at actually upsetting this team? I think the answer is a pretty clear no. I have seen a few people with their hot take of the playoffs be the Bulls are actually going to go far and they're actually going to beat the Bucks. And I'm like, what are you guys talking about? Like, I wonder if these people have watched the Bulls. I've certainly watched more than most people, so I definitely have a bit more of a perspective on this, and I would expect to have more of a perspective on it than most people. But genuinely, the amount of people I have seen suggest that the Bulls are actually going to have a real shot in this series is genuinely surprising to me. Now, I would love to be wrong, obviously, but I don't think I'm going to be. This is a team, the Bucks, that obviously their defensive rating in the regular season was not particularly good, but it is going to be much better in the playoffs because everybody's healthy and the effort is going to step up. It's just something that typically happens with contenders is they kind of chill in the regular season once they know what they're capable of, and then they turn it all up when the playoffs come around. LeBron James teams have been infamous for doing that, especially on the defensive end of the floor. But the Bucks are a really good interior team. The Bulls' biggest weakness on defense happens to be their interior. Now, I think they could do a relatively good job of defending Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton because they have the likes of Alex Caruso and Ayo Dosunmu. And I think that can be enough to be a decent defensive team in terms of matchups on the perimeter. But they're going to get killed inside by Giannis. And Nikola Vucevic is also notorious, specifically this season, for really playing poorly when dealing with even a pretty good big man. If he has to match up with Giannis in any capacity, it's not going to go well. I'd give him a chance to do decent enough against Brook Lopez, but that is about it. Even then, the last time the Bulls played the Bucks, Brook Lopez gave us an absolute fucking, I believe it was a 30-piece. Vucevic just has a tendency to suck, and I don't imagine he's going to do any better in the playoffs, in the context of the playoffs. So at this point, the conversation is, do the Bulls even take a game off of the Bucks? The way that they would have to do this is really you would just have to get an absolute heater from one of DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine, and really more likely to be DeMar DeRozan than Zach, just from the trends of this year, on top of the fact that Zach LaVine is still dealing with a knee injury. But I don't know that you're going to get that heater really, because they have the perimeter defense to do really well. They're probably going to put Drew Holiday on DeMar DeRozan, and I don't know that DeMar is going to mid-range himself into a 50-piece. Not to mention his record playoff-wise. A lot of people have been like, hey, DeMar's been good this year, but let's see what he does in the playoffs. Kind of nervous for that, cannot lie. I don't know what he's going to do in the playoffs, and I'm rather concerned. So, yeah, I think there is a chance they get a game, maybe two, if someone goes the fuck off. Also, there's some stuff from the Bulls training camp that came out that suggested that they were, well, I say training camp, because there was, Billy Donovan said they were treating practices like training camp in preparation of the playoffs, which in my eyes just means hopefully they are running things, they're trying to get things back to how they were run at the start of the season. Because I've talked about this plenty of times before. The big factor for injuries with this Bulls team was not just the fact that players were out, but the fact that through the injuries and the way that they had to adjust to a lack of players resulted in the Bulls losing their identity, which was their defense and their forcing turnovers and the getting on the fast break, the really fast pace. All of that has disappeared through all these injuries. Even with people coming back, it has remained gone. So what I am praying for is that ultimately they can return to that old way of playing. But even if they did that, even if they got some crazy heater from DeMar or Zach, At best, this is a 6-game series, and I'm banking on it being a 4 or 5-game series, just hoping the games are close enough that I am not embarrassed by it. As for the future of the Bulls, I really think it is on them to turn it around in this offseason, and I think they will, and they'll be back to being a 50-win caliber team, 50-plus win caliber team, and much better than they were to close this year. But yeah, this was a very depressing end to an otherwise really uplifting season. But that is it. Goodbye.